Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the week 7, which is the final session of Victorious Christian Living. We are on chapter 12, entitled The Overcomers. And the scripture is Hebrews 12 and 1. Therefore also, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily besets us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. How many of you know that running a race is hard work? You can train, you can do all the work, but you still might lose. Thankfully, in the Christian race, all that matters to God is that you finish the race. The victorious Christian life is like a marathon. The runners have fought the good fight. They've weathered the storms. But most importantly, his people, the runners who finish the race on the final day, are considered overcomers. However, there are those that may not finish, and because it may be because God will tell them, I made you to endure and overcome, but you didn't want this. You didn't want it bad enough. And the reason? While salvation may be free, sanctification is expensive. And some don't want to pay the cost to run this part of the race. But for those of you who will, here are some of the rewards that come with finishing the race. Who is the most important person at the race? And who is really there to help you finish? Some of the rewards that you get when you finish the race is that you have the eyes of the Almighty Judge on you. And there are 5 things that he's going to have for you to do. The first one, stay devoted to Christ. And you will enjoy a special intimacy with God in the next life to come. Jesus was speaking to the churches in the book of Revelation, and there were 5. And he wanted them all to understand what parts of the race they were in, what the problems were, and how to overcome them. So he was talking to the church at Ephesus. He said he had a problem with them because they had no love, just duty, and no devotion to God, no passion to God, but still just going through the motions of having church. You see, it is the intimacy that we have with God that results in the development of a relationship with him. And what's the reward of having a relationship with God? He says, to him that overcomes, I will give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. So in order to have the special intimacy with Christ, it can't be just about what you do. It's how you do it in love. To the second church, the church at Pergamon, he told them, don't compromise your beliefs, and you will enjoy a special honor at his wedding feast. See, the church of Pergamon compromised their beliefs, their doctrine, and dealt with sexual immorality in the church. Yeah. They didn't stand for anything, had no standards, and merely adjusted their beliefs to the norms in society at that time. Christians may be able to compromise on preferences, but they cannot compromise on principles. And what's the reward for not compromising, for believing in what thus saith the Lord? This is what Jesus tells them. To him who overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna to eat, and I will give him a white stone, and on the stone a new name written, which no one knows except him who receives it. What he wanted them to understand was that, look, do not compromise your beliefs And the special honor I have for you is a stone that has your brand new name and your brand new identity in it. The third church that he wanted to talk to was a church at Thyatira. And his message to them: remain holy, and you will enjoy a special position of authority under Christ. See, there was a woman named Jezebel who was leading the people astray at the church, and no one bothered to check her or correct her. And she was leading the people to being tolerant to sin in the church. And so Jesus wanted this church to know, look, remain holy. Don't do what everybody else tells you to do. Do what I tell you to do. Why? Because I'm a holy God, and the way I ask you to live is holy. If you do this, and this is the reward, he says, to those who keep my works until the end, to him will I give power over the nations. He shall rule them with a rod of iron, and the wicked shall be dashed to pieces like the potter's vessels. And because I, Jesus, have received the authority from my Father, I will give him the morning star. How you live now determines where you will sit in the future millennial reign of Christ. Live right now, and enjoy a seat of power and prestige in his kingdom. Follow what everybody else says. You might make it to heaven, but where he has you seated, it's not worth it. The fourth church that he talked to was the Church of Philadelphia. And this was the message that Jesus had for them: persevere, and you will enjoy a special public recognition. See, the Church of Philadelphia persevered through trials and tribulations and stayed obedient through it all. Believers who persevere are viewed by God as pillars of his kingdom program. And their reward, Jesus says, he who overcomes, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall have to go out no more. I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and I will write on him my new name. Perseverance is one of those things where you have to keep on enduring. You have to keep on praying when everybody else has stopped. You have to keep on going when nobody else wants to go. You have to show up when no one else shows up. Perseverance means that you go through the hard times and the good times, and you still do the same exact thing. And God tells his son to tell us, if you persevere, you don't ever have to leave the temple any longer. I will put my name on your heart. I will write it across your temple. I will make sure that people, when they walk into the temple, they will understand when they see you standing there as a pillar, that you fought the good fight, that you finished the course, that you stayed faithful. And then finally, the fifth church, Laodicea. His message to them was, remain truly committed, and you will enjoy special authority as well. Jesus' problem with the church at Laodicea, they were lukewarm. Not hot, not cold, lukewarm. To my people who like to drink coffee, everybody knows that lukewarm coffee, whoa. You either drink it hot or you drink it cold. And see, God wanted them to know, look, I wish that you were either hot or cold. If you're hot, you're worth something. If you're cold, I can warm you back up, but you are neither. You are lukewarm, and I can't do anything with that. But what's the reward of remaining hot? He says, to him who overcomes, I will grant to sit with me on my throne, as I also overcame and sat down with my Father on his throne. If you are an overcomer, God will call you forth publicly and will allow you to share his glory. So now we've talked about what it takes to become an overcomer. Now let's talk about who is the most important person at the race. The study calls it playing to a crowd of one. The church has too many people pleasers. We want to make sure that this person is satisfied and that person is satisfied. And, oh, we must do it for this person. You know, they ask for this, they ask for that. And you can find people like this on the TV programs and the radio, internet, social media, who can bring crowds and followers. God is looking for the people who aren't doing it for the crowds, for the people who aren't doing it for the special recognition. They're simply doing it because they love the Lord. He's looking for the ones that are content in worshiping to an audience of one. The one thing I love about doing praise and worship, half the time my eyes aren't on the audience. My mind is on what I'm singing and who I'm singing to. And it'll always be for the audience of one, and that is God. The other part to this is, what are you standing for? Acts 7:60, Stephen was stoned. And in the midst of him being stoned, he said, Lord, do not charge them with this sin. See, Stephen's life was an example of someone who was completely dedicated to being a servant of God. And you know, you're going to have some people that are not going to like you because you're doing what God has told you to do. Is your life such an example that Jesus stands up when you do what you're supposed to do for him? Does he give you the standing ovation? We should be growing and maturing in such a manner that he knows what you're doing for him is for him, in his honor. He is the lyrics to the song. He is the melody to the music. We do everything. We serve. We exhort. We worship. We plan. We praise. Everything in the Lord's house should be done for his glory and not our own. And that is how we overcome. In the handout, there was a young man. His name was Derek Redmond, and he was an Olympic runner. And he was coming around the track, and he was about third or fourth place. And something happened. He pulled a tendon, something in his leg, and he was unable to complete the race. But then, and they are not allowed to have anyone to come and help them until the race is over. But somebody in that audience didn't care. That someone came out of the stands and came down to the part of the track where Derek was standing and put his arm around him, and him helping Derek get across the finish line. And people were wondering, well, who's this man? It was his father. See, Derek's father knew what Derek had gone through to get to this race. And he knew how his son would feel if he wasn't able to complete the race. So even though his son was injured, even though everybody else had ran past him and finished the race, he was bound and determined to ensure that his son crossed that finish line. He said it didn't matter to him that the security was coming for him. He was going to make sure that his son finished that race And he came down out of the stands, put his arm around his son, and made sure if he had to carry him, his son was going to finish the race. Understand, it is not important how. It's not just important how you cross that finish line, but it's important that you cross the finish line, period. In the Christian race, it doesn't matter who finishes first. The word says it like this: for the race is not given to the swift nor to the strong, but to him who endures to the end. If you stay the course, you win. Even when we stumble, we have a Father who loves us so much that he says, if I have to come down there and help you cross that finish line, I'll do it because I want to see you finish. We serve an awesome God. So being an overcomer, I mean, sometimes you might have to sing for the audience of one. You might have to pick if you're going to be hot or cold. You might have to do some things that God only could let you do. Sometimes you're going to have to ignore the naysayers. You're going to have to ignore the people that are talking. You're going to have to persevere. To be an overcomer means you finish the race. Doesn't matter who wins, just as long as you finish. We must stay devoted to God, what his beliefs are, how he wants us to be holy, how he wants us to endure to the end. Our only audience member that is sitting there watching the race, rooting for us, is God. And we're doing it for him and him alone. So even though it's hard, even though you might stumble, if you keep going, knowing that God is with you, you will always be victorious. And not just in this life, but in the life to come. And the rewards far outweigh the suffering and the heartache and the hurt and the anguish, the lonely nights, the tears. All of it is worth it if we get to hear him say, well done, my good and faithful servant. Well done. I charge you, be an overcomer. May God bless you. I pray this series blessed you just as much as it has blessed me.